A new season pass, new cards, new cosmetics, core gameplay changes, balance changes, and bug fixes. I'm BadAsFish80, and this is a Minion Masters patch notes video. Let's dive in. Right, Minion Masters Furry Fury. This update, which is going to be version 1.45, this is going to be called Arcane Anomalies. Arcane Anomalies. It's dropping Thursday the 9th of March. We're going to have a new season pass, new cards, new cosmetics, core gameplay changes, balance changes, and of course, bug fixes. Let's find out about them. Right, first up, of course, is the season pass. So you got the battle pass or the free pass. And as you can see here, it's going to be all about crystal elves. So you can see we've got a couple of new cards. There's a new skin there, Ratbo. We've got a bunch of new avatars and a really cute looking new emote. And of course, a load of stuff. Skins, cards, currency, all that good stuff. So let's have a look at the new cards. So the first new card is called the Spell Dancer. Now the Spell Dancer is going to be available at tier 49 in the free pass or immediately at tier 1 in the season pass. But let's find out a little bit more about her. Okay, so she's a 3 mana ranged crystal elf minion. And as we can see, she's got 130 HP and 25 damage, which is the same as a War Dancer. But she's got a bunch of keywords. Let's find out about them. So, Mana Surge, that's fairly normal. But one thing to note for crystal elves, the Mana Surge is being changed a little bit in so much that it's only available for female crystal elves. And as we go through and look at some of the balance changes, you'll notice that a lot of the male, or all the male crystal elves who previously had Mana Surge no longer do. Okay, so Mana Surge is they get the 33% attack speed buff when you have 6 or more mana. She also has 2 arcane spheres. So these are the arcane spheres like you see on the Dormant Defenders, for example. So these are magical spheres that swirl around the minion and deal damage to the first enemy they touch. They do 30 damage. So there's 2 of those. Now, on play, if you have 6+ mana, so that means if you are at that point within Mana Surge, then she will fire 4 arcane sparks at random enemies in the area. Now, I believe the area is a strip. It's not a circle like a normal spell. It's a strip similar to Nirvir's Breath, but not necessarily the same range as Nirvir's Breath. But what does an Arcane Spark do? So an Arcane Spark will do 50 damage. So that's 4 of those, so it can do 200 damage in total. And remember, they will hit random enemies in the area. If there's only one enemy, it'll hit all of them on that one enemy. The offshoot, though, is if you do have this trigger with the Arcane Sparks, she will gain, or you will gain, 3 Mana Freeze. And Mana Freeze basically just means you can't use those next 3 manas. Okay, so that she has 2 states. Either you play her unactivated, let's call it, for 3 mana, or you play her activated, you get the Arcane Sparks, but it costs you 3 mana plus your next 3 mana. So it's either 3 mana or effectively 6 mana. But either way, you can spawn her after 3 mana. Mana Freeze is just a mechanic that allows you to spend the mana effectively before you have it. Okay, so she's the Spell Dancer, like a War Dancer, but has this ability to dump these sparks out on spawn. And let's have a look at her. Looks just like a War Dancer, as you would probably expect. Okay, so the second new card, and beware if you're affected by cute looking things, check out the Mana Chaser. Look at this. Incredibly cute. Okay, but what does the Mana Chaser do? So again, this is a Crystal Elf flying ranged minion, 2 mana, so it has 50 health, not very much, and it does 25 damage, 25 DPS. Spawns with stealth, so like an assassin, for example, becomes invisible when not attacking or taking damage for 2 seconds. Okay, so that's a 2 mana card, but it does have a secondary trigger. Again, if you have 6 or more mana, so if you are in Mana Surge at that time, when you spawn it, it summons 3 of them instead. And again, the offshoot of that is it freezes your next 3 mana. So again, this card has 2 effective states. Either it's unactivated, you will spend 2 mana and get 1 of them, or it is activated and you'll spend 5 mana, 2 plus 3 mana freeze, but get 3 of them. So it'll be interesting to see how these do. 25 damage, it's okay. 3 of them. They're kind of barrage in for 3 lots of 25, 75 damage a pop. That could be fairly decent. But of course they are going to be weak and fairly easy removed. Okay, so one thing to really understand about these new cards is the mana freeze mechanic. If you've got any questions about it, let me know in the chat. Maybe I'll make a video just explaining how mana freeze works, but it basically just means you spend the mana up front. There's a bunch of cards that already have the mana freeze mechanic, and it goes very well with the Crystal Elf mana surge because it helps you stay within the 6+ mana surge, so your units get buffed. Okay, so the mana chaser is going to be available at tier 38 in the free pass or tier 22 in the season pass, and this is what it looks like. Not my best screenshot, I must say. But it looks really, really cute, and I look forward to experiencing that. My only concern, of course, is some Crystal Elf stuff is really strong out there on the ladder at the moment, and obviously this is going to add to their repertoire, so hopefully things will be balanced as always. Okay, so those are the 2 new cards. Now we've got the new cosmetics. We've had some awesome looking skins recently, and that continues here with an awesome looking Ratbo skin. This, when I first saw this, I thought this was a new master. I'm going to be honest, this was so out of left field, I wasn't expecting it. So this is Ratbeard. I'll try that again. This is Redbeard Ratbo, Scourge of the Skies, legendary Ratbo skin. Can't wait to see how that is. Not sure if he actually fires cannonballs or not, but I'll look forward to finding that out. And not only do we have a new skin, we got a new super cute emote. And then we have also some new avatars. We've got the Mana Chaser avatar and the Spell Dancer avatar. So some new cosmetics there available through the Season Pass if you're interested. Right. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Right. Bridge changes. So there's some huge core gameplay changes coming. And if you have been following my recent videos, if you look up here, got the wrong side, I think I'll put a card up here so you can check that out. If you've been following the Beta Dwarf blog as well, you'll be able to see the changes there. But we're having a lot of change, well, 2 main changes to bridge control. So firstly, minions with summoning sickness can't be pushed onto a bridge. So you may use this mechanic, you may be aware of it, you may have seen it, where if you place a unit on top of another unit, it will push it away, depending on the unit's weight. And you can use that to your advantage by pushing your unit off of an enemy onto a bridge. So you can effectively take a bridge in a situation where normally you wouldn't be able to. But that's going to change. So you can't do that anymore by placing minions on spawn. So summoning sickness is something that almost all minions have. That means for the first, I think, second, they're unable to move or attack. Some things don't have them, like a Screaming Scrat has the rush keyword, but almost all of the minions have the summoning sickness. So you're not going to be able to take bridges with collision. So that's one big change. And then the second change is minions cannot be directly placed on a bridge. So things like a Scrap Pack, a lot of multi-minion cards, you can place them directly on a bridge because when you spawn them, they're kind of in a formation and the front ones will be on a bridge. So even if they take the bridge, even if you spawn them, they take the bridge, even if they walk backwards, they will have taken the bridge, but no more. You cannot do that. If you try to place them near a bridge, they'll kind of squish up against a wall so they cannot get onto a bridge. So those are the 2 main changes. As I say, check out my other video to see more information about this and some examples, etc. But basically, bridge control is going to be more difficult. And the offshoot of that is potentially aggro decks are going to get stronger because they're not so much bothered about aggro. About XP. And also units that have some kind of interaction with bridges or allow you to take bridges. So things like a Stint with its tech bridge grab ability, or a Wrecked Walker that'll just walk onto a bridge, ignore everything. Anything like that is going to likely become more popular because they're going to allow you to get bridges, which is something you're going to be struggling to do. But of course, the offshoot of a lot of these changes is there's going to be a lot of balances to cards that will impact this. So big cards that kind of loiter on bridges, they're going to be kind of stronger now because they're going to be harder to get the bridge back from. So we'll have a look at the balance changes, and we'll keep these changes in mind when we look at those. Right, on to the balance. As always, we'll look at the buffs, the rebalances where things are changed in multiple ways, stuff like that, and the nerfs. So let's go through the buffs to start off with. So Wrecked, Rex perk 3, the One Punch Blast, is getting changed in a couple of ways. Instead of being a single target, whatever it hits first, it hits spell, it's now being changed into what they're calling a damaged line nuke. So basically, it does damage in a line, and everything it hits, that damage gets subtracted from its overall damage, and it does 300 until it runs out. So for example, if you hit something with over 300 HP, that's going to do 300 damage to that first unit. But if you've got 3 units in a row that all have 100 HP, it's going to do 100 to the first, it's got 200 left, 100 to the second, it's got 100 left, and 100 to the last one. So that's a really nice change for his perk 3. It's not going to be something that can be easily blocked by just a scrat anymore. And in addition to that, it also does true damage. So any shields, any damage negation that units might have, the One Punch Blast will ignore that. Just to confirm, and as I understand it, the true damage is just for this perk 3, not his normal attack when he's out there on the field. So Rect is a pretty strong master already, and this is definitely going to make him stronger in certain circumstances. Right, next up we have another change to a master, Ravager. So Ravager's perk 3, we've seen some adjustments to Ravager over the last few patches with regards to the health of his Brutus and Terror Brutus, removing their self-healing, stuff like that. Looks like it's underperforming by this, because the health of the Terror Brutus is going up a little bit from 2300 to 2500. Next up is another change to a master, this time Valorian. Again, recently we saw a change where Valorian's perk 1 and perk 2 were switched around. So perk 1 is the Searing Light removal that you get much earlier in the game. And the number of attacks is going up from 4 to 5. So that's more powerful removal for a long period of the game. And of course, when you get to perk 3, it doubles that. So that's going to be a nice big buff. So for example, at the moment you do 160 damage overall with perk 1 up to 200. And at perk 3, you currently do 320 damage. Now that's up to 400. And of course that means you can start killing things that you couldn't previously kill. So at perk 1, you'll now be able to kill a succubus or a boom buggy if you can get all the hits on it. And perk 3, you can now kill things like a prowler or a crystal sentry. Things that previously you weren't quite able to do. Actually, I think the crystal sentry might be slightly outdated because that's only 300 health. Right. Next. Cowardly Imps, they get a small attack cooldown buff, which means they attack more quickly. They're not very strong. They have a very long cooldown. This can get them into the fight more quickly. Hopefully, they'll be a little bit better. Pincer of Dread, a little bit of a damage increase, 120 to 140. Not much of a change, but of course, we're hitting some cutoff points for units HP, so it can now kill a Stixie and a Wizard Puff, which previously it couldn't. Next up is a Scrat Pack. So Scrat Pack getting more scrats. I think this is just an impact of the bridge control changes. Scrat Pack's going to be losing that bridge grab ability somewhat, so it makes up for this, getting a little bit more value overall. Next up we have Stormy. Zeus is going to like this one. Attack cooldown 4 seconds down to 3.5. Just attacks more quickly. Get more value out of it, hopefully. Now we have Sunburn. This is an interesting change. Sunburn, of course, rages everything, but now it's going to remove Frozen and Slow. We know Bear Avalanche is out there. It's very strong. And one of the strong things about Bear Avalanche is the permanent slow that it impacts, inflicts on the units. But now the Sunburn can remove that. And I kind of like these interactions because it kind of makes sense, right? Sunburn removing Frozen and Slow. I'd like to see more things like this. Next up, a small change to Taluk, the Vessel. Not a very used card. Maybe it'd be used more. Slight DPS increase. Attack cooldown down from 2 seconds to 1.8 seconds. Okay, so now we get into the rebalances. So these are things that are changed in multiple ways, or if we're not sure if it's a buff or a nerf. Okay, so King Puff, the perk 3 Night Puffs, previously had 50 health. That's going to be dropped down to 2 HP, but they do gain a shield. So it's a rebalance, but I like it. You're not going to be able to quite so easily remove them all with a spell or a Screaming Scrat, something like that. So that's going to be good. And they're effectively going to be 2 shots to pretty much everything. So, not sure if that's designed to be a buff or a nerf, but I like it. Right, next up is Milloween. Milloween's getting changed to her perk 2 Arcane Missiles. Arcane Missiles, her perk 2, has always been a little bit... I've always felt like there's something weird about the targeting of them, because they miss things, and I really don't think they should. But it's being simplified now. So it's now targeted and homing. So the way you're going to target it is similar to the Frostfeather Flyby, where you have a circle, you target it, anything in that circle is seen as a target, and then that will be something that the sparks will randomly go towards. Now, so it's targeted and homing. Homing means if the units move, it will follow it. Same with the Frostfeather Flyby. It's going to be slower than it previously was, and that's important because they will... Unlike the Frostfeather Flyby, they will impact the first unit encountered. So that means that you can interact with them. You can protect your valuable units by trying to block these sparks that are coming in. So, a bit of a change here. It's going to be harder in some circumstances to hit what you want, but it's also going to be harder to miss everything. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there. Right, next up. You're going to need to strap in because you're going to have to really follow along for this next change. Mordar. We've got a massive change to Mordar. I think I understand it, and hopefully I'm going to help you to understand it. Right. His tombstone is now on a timer. We've seen a lot of the perks recently for Masters go to timer instead of cycle-based. Mordar is following along with that. It's a 25-second timer, but the timer starts not when you play the previous tombstone, but when the previous tombstone dies. The tombstone health is going up from 400 to 500. The activation delay, that's where it's charging up and won't revive anything, is going down from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. Okay, we've got lots of green arrows here. These are good things. The duration is going up from 40 seconds to 60 seconds. And I'll explain this next point in a little bit more detail on the next slide, but when you make a revive, when a minion spawns from it, it will damage the stone. But, crucially, something that Mordar couldn't do before is a tombstone can revive multiple times. And again, we'll look at that in just a second. Now, stunning, the way stuns interacted with Mordar's tombstone have changed over the last 6 months or so. We're back to stunning resets the cooldown. Previously, a long time ago, this is how it was. Then it changed to stunning paused the revivability only while the stun was happening, and then once the stun had finished, then it would be immediately activated. But we're back to stunning resets cooldown. We're going to see more shock rock probably, right? So that means it has to recharge, has to go through another 10-second recharge. Right, and at perk 3, let me pronounce this right, Sepulchre. Nailed it. At perk 3, instead of getting a second tombstone, you get one massive tombstone. It's going to be a larger tombstone model, and the health is going to go up from 500 to 1500. But let's clarify how this works, okay? I mentioned that it can revive multiple times. How is this implemented? Let's find out. Okay, so there's a couple of things we need to understand, right? Firstly, when a minion revives from the tombstone, it will deal half of its max HP damage to the tombstone. Okay, so when a minion comes out, it damages the tombstone. The minion will revive with health equal to, keep the notes going down, twice, and I'll probably have to do a whole video on this, it will revive with health equal to twice the amount of damage that it did to the tombstone. So what's going to happen is a minion will revive. It will do damage to the tombstone. It will either destroy the tombstone or it won't. If it doesn't destroy the tombstone, then it will revive with max HP, and the tombstone will then recharge and be available to revive something else. If the revive destroys the tombstone, then the minion will still revive, but it will not have max HP, and the HP it has depends on the amount of HP the tombstone had left. Okay, makes perfect sense. I was a little confused at start, but let's go through a quick example. Okay, so 500 HP tombstone, right? Takes 10 seconds to charge. All buildings have a decay damage, so by the time it's charged, it's only got 417 health left. Now imagine a warrior revives. So as I said before, when a unit revives, it does half of its max HP damage to the tombstone. So a warrior has 350 HP, so it does 175 damage to the tombstone. So the tombstone is reduced to 242 HP. So the important thing here is the tombstone survives, which means the warrior will revive with twice the amount of damage it did, which was half of its max HP. So if you follow the math through, it means it spawns with max HP, 350 health. Okay, so we got a 500 HP tombstone. It's revived a warrior and it's down to 242 health. What happens next? Well, unlike before where the tombstone would just be destroyed after a revive, because it's still alive, it will recharge. So it will take another 10 seconds to recharge. So at this point, let's say it's got 159 HP left. So it's available to revive something. At this point, a Colossus dies and gets revived. So a Colossus does 1,000 divided by 2, so half its max HP damage, which is 500 damage to the tombstone. Which, because the tombstone has 159 HP left, it destroys the tombstone. So it destroys the tombstone doing 159 HP damage. So that means that the Colossus revives, and remember it revives with twice the amount of damage it did as HP. So that was 159 damage it did. So it revives with twice that, so 318 HP. So Mordor can revive multiple things. That's really what you need to take out of it. A lot of small things, one big thing. And again, of course, at perk 3, you get that much bigger tombstone. So you can revive a bunch more stuff. So you've got to take into account, of course, if you want to use the tombstone most efficiently, you want to revive something big and destroy it and get that massive HP. Because what's happening, if you're reviving a lot of small things, you're going to have a lot of time where the tombstone is charging and decaying, and that's wasting its HP and how much it can give from a res. But of course, there's a lot of units in the game that don't really care about how much HP they res with. So for example, we've seen this many times with Mordor. I think like a Tranquil Monkey, it can spawn with a slither of HP. It doesn't care, it's just going to heal. And of course, things like snipers, stuff like that, it doesn't really matter if your sniper's full HP or 1 HP. It doesn't really change much. So this is a huge change to Mordor. I'm interested to see how it works out. Of course, Mordor's always had the huge issue of being really coin flippy. You get a great res or you just miss it, and the difference between those two things is massive. So maybe this will smooth that out. So it'll be interesting to see firstly how this works. Is it fun? And is it strong? Is it too strong? Is it too weak? Who knows? Watch this space. Right, next up, Morelia. So there's been a load of changes to the cost of her spellbook, the pages in the spellbook before. I'm confused about them. Let's simplify it. Okay, so the Book of the Dead, her perk 1, now it costs nothing. Previously it cost 1 mana, now it costs nothing. So this means, because it costs nothing for the book and for the pages, that this is a buff for Morelia if you use anything except the spell reduction. So spirits, drain, skeletons. This is a buff. What is not a buff is if you're using the spell reduction, the Forbidden Knowledge. So at perk 1, the Forbidden Knowledge will reduce the cost of one spell, 4+ mana spell, by 1. So it still saves you 1 mana like it previously did. Previously, it would cost you 1 and you'd save 2, so that would save you 1 in total. Now it costs you none, but you save 1, so it's 1 in total. The maths checks out. Now at perk 2, the Unholy Bargain, where the spellbook gets buffed, her Forbidden Knowledge will reduce, this time, 3 spells. So previously it was 2 spells, now it's 3 spells. 3 4+ spells by 1. So again, the same amount of mana saving, but it's spread out over more spells. So basically the devs wanted to buff her, but didn't want to buff the spell part of her, because that's kind of used way too much, because it's very, very strong. So this is going to put some additional deck building restrictions, because you're going to need those 3 spells if you want to be using that. So it'll be interesting to see how people work around that restriction. Right, we're still in the rebalances, of course. So we've got Crystal Sentry, as mentioned earlier, the male Crystal Elves losing Mana Surge, but the attack cooldown is being buffed. So overall general DPS is better, but no Mana Surge the devs wanted to include the Crystal Sentry in the starter deck, and they felt the Mana Surge was a little confusing for new players, so this is one of the reasons why this is happening. I do like things being simplified where appropriate for new players, but I don't like it if it just gets dumbed down too much. Right, Lord Fanriel, again removing Mana Surge, but getting bigger damage, can now, at standard damage, charge through a Cannon Roller or a Stixie, which you previously couldn't. If you Rage it, it can then kill a Musketeer and a Succubus, which you previously couldn't. And if you Berserker Rage it, it can kill a Ting, which previously it couldn't. And again, the theme continues here. Lord Sentinel Thelic, losing Mana Surge, but getting an attack cooldown buff and a damage. The damage nerf there, that green should be red. Tut-tut. Right. Puffs. Little change to the puffs. They no longer die. And that's so they don't completely mess up Mordor. So you can now play puffs in Mordor without having to worry about your tombstones. Sanctum of the Cleansing Fire. So the cooldown between activations is now 5 seconds instead of 7 seconds, but the duration is down from 30 seconds to 25 seconds. But I think overall that's better. You're going to get, I think, you're going to get 5 instead of 4.2 activations. What's 0.2 of an activation? We call that no activation. Right, Slitherbind. This is a small change to the mechanics. So Slitherbind is where you attach Slither Bounds to other Slither cards. The cap used to be a maximum of 3 per card. That's being removed, so you can have as many as you want. And cards with multiple Slitherbind, so things like an Impatient Statue, I think that has 3 of them, they will attach Slitherbinds to random cards. So previously, if you had something that attached 3, it would always attach those 3 to 1 card, whereas now they're going to be randomly spread out. So they could be 1 to a bunch of cards, or it could be 2 and 1, or it still could be 3. That's just the way that randomness works. Not really a big deal. Walking Blind Date. Again, a small change because of Mordor. Transforms instead of dying, so you can't just revive the box. Now we get into the nerfs. APEP, of course, everywhere at the moment got changed. Cycle-based perks were replaced with time-based perks. Now, a couple of changes. His damage, his auto-attack damage is going down from 40 to 30. Remember, he will attack 1 or 2 targets, and to clarify some confusion, he will attack 1 target for 30 damage, or he will attack 2 targets for 30 damage each. It doesn't get split. And his perk 3 timer, that's the free single-use 4-mana card, is going to be slowed down. So instead of every 28 seconds, it's going to be every 33 seconds. So some nerfs there to APEP. Next up is a reduction in damage for an aimbot. It's a card that's performing very well. The damage, the damage is being reduced is okay, but one of the strengths is the nats that it comes with. Maybe it leads to lose a nat, or I don't know, cost more tech or something. Not sure the damage is the best way to balance that. Right, a card that you'll see everywhere, or will have seen everywhere, and probably still will continue because it's still going to be strong. Bearvalanche. Damage, again, we've seen a bunch of nerfs to this already, but the damage is going down from 160 to 40. 160 to 140. So that's going to be able to kill a lot less things. So things like Lady and Frey and an Assassin will no longer die to the Bearvalanche, but of course it will still do the stun and the AoE. So it's still going to be a decent spell, just not as strong as it used to be. Next up, we have a nerf to the Blue Golem. So this is, again, a big unit that's going to be stronger because bridges are going to be harder to get. So it's going to get a nerf. Attack cooldown going up 2 seconds to 2.2 seconds. Small DPS reduction. Now the Caber Tosser. So his Caber damage when he throws the Caber is going to go down from 200 to 150. So that's quite a big nerf, to be honest. And there's a bunch of stuff that won't kill anymore, like a Succubus, Blastmancer, things like that, will no longer die to a single Tosser. Colossus, damage reduction 275 down to 250. And of course, if you're playing the game of Rage in the Colossus, then that's going to be an even bigger nerf. Right, Crystal Construct. We're going to see a bunch of these. Mana Surge removed. Dormant Defenders. Mana Surge removed. Now, one thing I'm worried about, and I've seen this a lot, Dormant Defenders are very, very strong in pre-mades when people play 3 of them. I think they're too strong. I really would like to see a wildcard copies allowed restriction on this particular card. Let me know in the comments what you think, but that's not what we've got. Also, Toll of the Dead. Please, only allow 2 of them. Right, Drone Walker. Damage is down from 45 to 40. I think this is collateral damage from the aimbot nerf. And I think the Drone Walker is going to feel this nerf more because it doesn't have any nats or anything else like that. The damage that it does, that's all it has. So it's going to feel this a little bit more than the aimbot. Right, Guardian, Mana Surge removed. Just a quick point with the Guardian. A lot of people seem to have missed this change it's been about for 6 months or so, but it doesn't fully protect Crystal Elf units anymore. Only absorbs 75% damage. Please consider that. Living Statue, another big unit being nerfed a little bit. 1000 HP down to 900. Rammer. I mentioned about the concern about aggro decks. Damage of the Rammer going down from 180 to 160. We've got the red golem. Again, like the blue golem, attack cooldown is increased from 2 seconds to 2.2 seconds. Rocket Scrap. So I think the Rocket Scrat's already in a strong place, and the fact it can jump onto a bridge and take it or neutralize it, whatever, is going to make it even stronger after the changes. So it's getting a damage reduction from 100 to 90. Again, doesn't seem much, but it will suddenly not be able to single shot spear throwers, flightless dragon whelps, things like that. So it will trade less effectively. Stint. Attack cooldown going up from 1.1 to 1.2 seconds. And again, we mentioned this a lot. This is going to be everywhere probably because of the bridge grab mechanic. Troubadour, health going down from 15 to 1400. And Vulture Prime getting a small attack cooldown increase from 0.9 to 1 second. Right. So those are all the balance changes. Let's have a quick look at the bug fixes. So there's a further fix for APEP Simulacrum ability cards. I don't know if this will ever be fully fixed, but we're getting close to it. Now, there was a crash if you use /CD to copy your deck or /SD to save your deck whilst you were deck building in Mayhem. It would crash the game. I know this has frustrated a lot of people. Now it doesn't. So you can now copy and save your decks as you wish for Mayhem. Now, this is an interesting one. Frozen lasts for 5 seconds, but it never should have. It should have only ever lasted for 3 seconds. So it's been bugged ever since it came out, which is a little bit mind-blowing. And that's why it's so strong. So Frozen is now going to be reduced from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. So anything that's freezing things is going to feel this nerf. Azog's ability has been corrected since it indicated he could hit air. He couldn't. Lash of Our Moon, that's the spell, will now have a damage and master damage stat on the card. Previously it just said it did hits regular damage, which was kind of a little bit lazy, a little bit awkward. Right, fixed Bearvalanche Bears running in the wrong direction for the opponent. Fixed the Clutch Cooker avatar showing flames from behind. No idea. And Mayhem has been coincided to start with the patch release. We like that. And the Illusionary Dragon, when it popped, for some reason it wouldn't damage a Harbinger, but now it will. Okay, so not a huge amount of bug fixes this time, but some really important ones in there. Okay, so there we have it. Arcane Anomalies. Thursday the 9th. That's tomorrow if you're watching this live. So, new season pass. We got new cards. The Spell Dancer and the Mana Chaser. We got the new skin, which is the Rat Beard, Rat Bow, and of course the other cosmetics that go with it. Core gameplay changes with regards to the bridge grabbing, and of course a bunch of balance changes and bug fixes. A lot to look forward to. I'm excited. Don't forget, claim your guild rewards, Tri-Team Tourney rewards, etc. before the season resets. Otherwise, you'll lose them. I generally forget after reminding you. And please let me know in the comment, what do you think about the changes? Is the balance changes that you like or don't like? Is there something that you think should have received some addressing but didn't? What do you think about the bridge changes? Remember, if you didn't fully understand the bridge changes, stuff like that, check out my video. I don't know, it's here somewhere. But yeah, just get into the game tomorrow and find out. Yep, that's it. Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the content here in the fish tank. I'm Bad as Fish, and I'll see you again soon.